I was posted to Halifax, Nova Scotia in 2010 when Queen Elizabeth II paid us a visit. It was a special year as it was the 100th anniversary of the Canadian Navy. There were many events that day, and a few of us were lucky enough to be included in her itinerary, if only for a moment. As a result of various individual accomplishments, such as deployments, charity work, etc., 10 of us sailors were selected to meet her in person. Earlier that year, I competed in the Bataan Memorial Death March, a marathon in the arid White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. Because we were registered as a military heavy co-ed team, we wore our combats, donned 16-kilogram packs, marched as a group. I was the female that made us co-ed. The march is an annual event. It's commemorative of the tens of thousands of American and Filipino soldiers who surrendered to the Japanese forces in 1942 and were force-marched over 96 kilometers through the Philippine jungles. Thousands died on the march, and those who survived the heat and their cruel captors faced terrible conditions in prisoner of war camps. The starting elevation of the 42-kilometer march was 1,327 meters, and the additional 350 meters to the top of the sandy hill was tough on us sailors coming from sea level. Also, deserts are hot. The Canadian East Coast is not. The nausea from the altitude sickness was the worst part for me. In events like these, where you must consume calories as you go, you really have to force yourself to eat, even though you want to vomit. The balance of calories, water, and electrolytes determine how you finish, or if you finish at all. But we could hardly complain when we considered the ordeal the World War II soldiers faced. We logged a lot of training miles in Halifax and returned to Canada with a silver medal. Before the royal visit, we received orders and were briefed on what to expect. Her Royal Majesty and the Duke of Edinburgh would arrive by frigate, the HMCS St. John's, which would come alongside Her Majesty's Canadian Dockyard. From there, she would descend the brow, that's the gangway for you non-Navy types, and meet us one at a time from the single rank we were to be placed in. I have to mention, too, it's the nicest brow I have ever seen. I was certain no sailor had ever crossed it before, nor likely had any sailor crossed it since. There wasn't a stray scuff or bit of rope anywhere, and it was so very shiny. We were to be dressed in our dress uniforms, pressed, spit, polished like usual, but better. The day of the event, while triple checking for stray lint on my black lint highlighting uniform, one of my peers casually said, "I wonder what the Queen smells like." She found a bit of fluff on my shoulder, removed it, and sent me to my royal engagement. As Queen Elizabeth II walked her way down the line on the jetty, speaking to each sailor she met, I replayed the rules in my head. My nervous energy reverberated throughout my body as I reminded myself why I was there and hoped to be able to communicate that coherently. I also really wanted to know what she smelled like. We were given special etiquette direction in advance. Don't shake her hand unless offered, don't touch her, curtsy, bow on arrival, etc. We all studied the pamphlet the night before. As luck would have it, there was no sniffing etiquette. When my turn arrived, she stood in front of me and asked why I was selected. I explained the march, followed by a "Your Majesty" to address her correctly. "Very good," she replied, with a single nod. As she turned away from me, just before she moved on, I made my move. Ever so casually, while remaining at attention, I pivoted from my ankles and slowly leaned forward. Then I took the biggest, quietest, most important breath I've ever taken. She glanced back towards me, nodded in farewell, and moved to the next person. I subtly pivoted backwards, again parallel with my peers. Prince Philip, on her heels and cheeky as ever, stated, "It was a death march." "Yes, Your Royal Highness." "And you lived?" "Yes, sir." "So you failed?" I hesitated, caught off guard by his wit. "I suppose so, sir." Looking back, I'm pretty sure I was a disappointment to His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, but I was a pretty big deal in the office when I was able to tell my colleagues that Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, smelled like flowers. Thank you.